So as a business owner, you always need to be asking yourself, how can I do more? And if you can't do more, you need to be looking at your metrics. So if you run an SMMA and you have a hard time scaling, I want to break down for you the two most important metrics that you should be obsessed with in your business to basically scale. And those two metrics are CAC and is lifetime gross profit. Because if you have these two numbers in place, you basically just need to spend more money and you thereby have a predictable machine you can scale. So in this video, I'm going to break down how I am decreasing my CAC and how I'm increasing my lifetime gross profit. I'm currently running an SMMA in the remodeling niche, doing around $75,000 a month for context. So let's just dive right in. So essentially the first thing is lowering the CAC. And what I mean by that is essentially how can you pay less for acquiring a new client? And there's a lot of different stuff that goes into this. The first thing is ad spend. And in this video, I'm going to only be talking about basically paid advertising because that's what I'm doing. I believe that's the best way to basically increase your lifetime gross profit as well, or lifetime value, because if you can spend ads on clients, you can first obviously get more clients, which means the whole machine gets more predictable, especially if you start hiring closers. But second, also, like, you get inbound leads from people that are reaching out to you, and thereby you will also get higher quality people or businesses. So essentially what we're doing here is we are crafting around 25 to 50 different ads and putting it into a campaign budget optimization ad or campaign structure. The reason why we do that is because with the Andromeda update, that's what we have seen the best results with. So it's campaign budget optimization, it's one ad set, and that's just throwing all of the ads in there. You can also separate it with ad sets just to keep the structure and then have different messaging. The messaging is extremely important. And the reason why I say that is because when I first started my agency, basically like my messaging was like a pay-per-closed job or some shit like that. The reason why that didn't work well for me was because, you know, the type of business owners that wants to essentially pay when they close a job is because they don't want to pay anything up front, and also because they are scared of an upfront investment. That means I was attracting shit clients. It took a hit on my close rate, and also the clients I signed were low quality, which thereby mean my lifetime gross profit on these clients were bad. So you need to basically craft a message that's speaking to your ideal client profile, which I would assume is people that are like in the upper market of your industry. That's the ones I want to be focusing on, because fundamentally people doing, for instance, under $1 million in my industry, they're just not good business owners. And thereby, if you generate leads, you generate qualified appointments for them, they're going to have a hard time closing, you know, the appointments you send you, and it's going to make your job a lot harder. The next thing is then the booking. So when you're spending on ads, you obviously send them to like a landing page where they can, you know, book an appointment. So the metric we're looking at here is cost per qualified appointment. At the end of the day, I don't really care about the cost per website schedule. I care about cost per qualified booking, because that's people that I'm actually able to close. So on the booking page, there are some things that are super important to basically make sure you are protecting your time by not jumping on calls with people that don't have any money, but also to condition your pixel in the right way. So what I mean by that is when you are jumping on calls at the beginning, you maybe are seeing common patterns in people that are jumping on. For instance, maybe they aren't in your industry. Then you can ask like a qualifying question. Are you doing flooring remodel, for instance? Are you a remodeler doing flooring? Yes or no? If they say no, then they just shouldn't be able to book a meeting. Next thing then is if you have seen a common pattern is like in a certain revenue level in your industry that are just not good at working with, then you can just have like a question, what is your revenue level? Are you doing $0 to $500,000 a year? Are you doing 500 to a million? Are you doing 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 plus, etc., etc.? And then you just basically disqualify the people that are doing under 500K, for instance. Then something that's also important is that you send those qualified bookings. For instance, you can just send the people that are over 2 million, if that's your ideal client profile, back to the pixel, so they can then find more of these people, and thereby you're conditioning the pixel. Another thing we are also doing, which is just like a hack, is we are using Typeform, just because the opt-in rate is higher on it, because the UR is better compared to Go High Levels. And then we are integrating Calendly directly, so we aren't basically losing people by the page loading to the next page, which is the scheduling page. Next thing then is the show rate. And here there's also a lot of different levers that you can pull, because essentially if you have a 50% show up rate and your cost per booked appointment is 200, then suddenly your cost per showed appointment is like $400. So this is also a lever that is extremely important to measure and to take the necessary actions to get that get that show rate up. So the first thing is a thank you page video. So this is also in a sense going to be saving you some time, because people that aren't that bought in and serious, they will drop off here and maybe cancel the call, which is great. The next thing is then you are basically preparing people for the meeting. So you can set expectation that they shouldn't be driving, they should be in front of their computer, the decision makers should be present. And also, you can just give them some basic context about what you're doing, show some testimonials, so they already kind of know, like, and trust you before you jump on. Then something, because we're like in a trust recession, is to basically tell them to do their due diligence before the meeting. So you can show them your review page, you can show them that they can watch some other reviews under, just to make sure that they've already done their research, because the worst thing is getting to the end of the call and then they're like, I don't really trust you, I need to research your company. They should already have been doing that before jumping on the meeting. The next thing is then personalized reminders. Or sorry, I just skipped the objection prevention videos. So you have the thank you page video at the top, and then under you have the objection prevention videos. So these videos are essentially videos you create based on the most common objections you are seeing. So for instance, if you get a lot of people asking before the meeting, what is your process? How do you get quality leads? How do you make sure they're actually qualified? You can make a video breaking down the qualification filters your call center, for instance, using on the phone to make sure the bookings are qualified when they show up to their clinic or to their job site, whatever. That's just something that are preparing them for the meeting, so it's more like a sales call and not just you educating them on your service. You basically just take all of your transcripts from Fathom or whatever you're using to record your meetings, and then you can use Manus or ChatGPT to basically craft the most common objections you're getting, and then you're building these videos based on that. Next thing that we have seen has increased our show rate a lot is basically personalized reminders. So you have to be very personal in the messaging, so it shouldn't seem like it's just automated messages. You can even, if you're in remodeling, you can say, yo brother, or stuff like that to make it seem organic, because then they feel like, oh wow, he has actually written this out himself. And something you can also do is one day before, you can record a video of yourself presenting that you will be the strategist or whatever you call you, that are going to be taking care of the call, because basically not showing up to a meeting when you can see the human being on the other side is just a lot harder for people, or they would just do you the favor of telling you if they can show up to this meeting. Next thing is then email sequence, and this is kind of going hand in hand with the objection prevention videos. This is an email sequence that is being pushed out before you show up to the meeting. So this is addressing the most common objections, it's showing them the proof they need to see before the meeting, and all of that is basically preparing them for the meeting. The next thing is also short form content. So you can make a retargeting campaign that are addressing the most common objections that you are then crafting short form content around. Because now, when they're actually showing up for the call, they're excited, which increases the show up rate, but they're also more likely to buy, which brings me to the next part, which is the close rate. So now I don't have time to go, or that's not the point of the video, to go too much into detail with my entire sales process, but it's basically going into the discovery, figuring out where they're at, where they want to be, what they've tried in the past, what is kind of the roadblocks from getting them there, and then you need to position your service as a simultaneous reason why they haven't been getting to that point in the past, or, you know, why what they tried in the past failed and why this time will be different. Next thing is then, you know, overcoming their objections, you know, not taking their smoke screens, but basically, you know, overcoming them and calling them out on their bullshit. And then you go for the close, obviously. So that's the first thing, basically lowering the cost per acquisition. The next thing then is going to be increasing lifetime gross profit, or just in general lifetime value. So the first thing here is going to be the onboarding. So the onboarding is something that I in the past have been sleeping a lot on. It's so important because it's not just about getting the sale. Because in the future, advertising costs are going to increase, and the agencies that are going to dominate the market are the ones that have the best profit because they can outspend their competitors. So you need to be reinforcing their decision. That's the first thing on the call. And then you need to dive deep into the goals. So what I did in the past, which is stupid, is basically just jumping on this meeting and getting the access to the Facebook, doing all the housekeeping tools, and not really diving into what they have tried and what their actual desires are. Because this is leverage you create for yourself later down the line. Because if they want to cancel, you can keep them accountable on basically this. You can keep them accountable on their goal, and have that as kind of like in your tool belt if they're about to churn. Also, you create leverage for upselling them on ad spend. So if they want to hit a high revenue number and they're not spending enough on ads, you can then upsell them on ad spend and thereby increase your lifetime value by keeping them accountable to their goal. Something that we have also started doing is basically upselling them. So we're upselling them on SEO. The reason we do that is because we are making our whole service better, but we're also having two components, which means if they are dropping off on the ad side of things, they can then continue with SEO, and that means our CAC to lifetime gross profit will be higher, and we are having our clients for longer. Maybe they even just pause for a month or two for ads, and then they get that back on because you still maintain that relationship and contact with the client. So that's the first thing. The next thing is then the launch call. So here, expectation setting is extremely important. You obviously show them the ads, show them all the work that you have done, and then you set the expectations. So the key here is to under-promise and over-deliver. So, when you have been on this sales call, you have probably been telling them a lot of good stuff, but now you kind of need to humble them down to earth and tell them exactly what is realistic, and that the first month is probably going to be a bit slower. And it is, in some cases, going to be slower. It's definitely true. We need to gather feedback. We need to see exactly what's working. And every company we work with is completely different, the way they operate their business, all of that. Because then if you're going to crush it in the first month, you seem like a hero. And that's really what can make them stay for years instead of just a month or two, which then kills the profitability and the whole reason for signing them in the first place. Then obviously we have the delivery, which is also obviously extremely important. So we are pushing out 20 to 30 different videos when we sign on a client. This is also like campaign budget optimization, different ad sets, just because we have seen the more room for Facebook we give them to play with stuff, the better the results are. The next thing is then our in-house call center team. So the more problems we solve for these businesses, basically the better the products and the longer they will stay, the more we can also charge. So we have an in-house call center team that we're running, and here it's extremely important to have incentives aligned. So all of the people in the business are on the same page. So that's the media buying, doing everything they can, not just to get the cheapest cost per lead, but actually getting the cheapest cost per qualified booked appointment. So exactly like you're doing with, the B2B ads side of things, you're tracking all of these different metrics throughout the system. You're doing the exact same for your clients, tracking the cost per lead, the cost per qualified booked appointment, tracking the show rate, and also tracking the close rate from the clients so you can support them if they're dropping the ball in terms of basically having a good close rate. You can even have some of your partners that are doing sales training for your other clients. Then we have obviously ongoing retention. So we have bi-weekly meetings with the clients, and we are tracking the projections we set on that launch meeting. So we make sure we're on track. We're showing them that we are dedicated to making this work and that we are constantly iterating the system. Next thing then is increasing ad spend, which I've already been covering. When they're crushing it, we want to upsell them on increasing ad spend, and then getting referrals, which is basically just free cash when we get those. And referrals are usually like the best ones, but kind of like what starts that whole thing is signing more clients in the first place. So that is essentially how we are lowering our cost per acquisition and increasing our lifetime gross profit. Because when we have that, we basically have a machine we can put more money into, because that means every time we're signing a client, we're getting 4K. And that means we just need to spend more money on ads, and then we will get more in return. And that's how you have that predictability to start hiring, CSMs, sales reps, and so on. So this is the numbers that I'm obsessed with in the business, and with like all of the actions I'm taking on a daily basis is always towards either decreasing the cost per acquisition or making sure that I'm having an amazing product that are increasing my lifetime value and thereby my lifetime gross profit. If you already have these numbers in your business, it's just about spending more on ads. So I hope this was valuable. Have a good one. Bye-bye.